Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the January 24th, 2023 school board meeting for Arlington Heights District 25. Dr. Bine is unable to be with us today, but the board has all of the materials that we need, and she has helped us prepare for this meeting. So we're really happy, and so for personal reasons she won't be here, and it's actually I couldn't believe that it's her first meeting ever that in her whole career that she hasn't been able to be here. So we're excited that all of you are here today. And Lana, would you please call roll?
Member Cherniglia?
Yes.
Member
Here.
Jogi?
Yes.
Member Scapalato?
Here.
Member Faso?
Here. Thank you, Lana. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Board of Education is always pleased to recognize students, staff, and the community members who help make District 25 the great place it is for our community. And tonight we will be recognizing students who have demonstrated excellence in band and in our district spelling bee. And today we have, first off, we're going to start with our students. Huge congratulations to them who qualified for the 2023 All-Illinois Junior Band. And congratulations to the following Thomas Middle School students that qualified and under the guidance of Ms. Candace Horton, who's the band director. And the students we will be recognizing today is Emily Carlton, who did percussion, and Brandon Geltner, and Henry Ulrich, I believe, for clarinet, and Elliot Woody for percussion as well. So we have a little treat for you that Dr. K can pass out for us today.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jogi. So if we could have each one of you come up one at a time, I'll call you off by name, and we have a certificate that was printed by the All-Illinois Junior Band. We congratulate and honor these specific students, and it will have your school name on it as well, and then signed on behalf of the conductor. I'm not going to attempt his name. Your teacher, Candy Gordon, and this is our way of saying thank you and congratulations, and then what student wouldn't love? So, without further ado, could I have Emily Colton come on up in the percussion Excellent. Congratulations, Emily. Next up, we have Brandon Geltner. Don't run away too fast. All the answers. Yes, we may have to redo those too. Next up, congratulations to Elliot Woody. Always congratulations. I hope you enjoy this squishy ball. It's not a stress ball. You have no stress. Congratulations. And last in this group, Henry Berwick. Henry looks thrilled. There's another smile. Wonderful. Congratulations. Thank you.
Excellent job to our students. And to qualify for the All-Illinois Junior Band, students had to prepare a scale sheet and 2 selections of music. And in November, they submitted audio recordings of their performance to be considered judged for acceptance and competed with several hundred applicants from all over the state for a limited number of spots. The event was held in January at the University of Illinois, my alma mater, where students had rehearsals and sectionals all day Friday and Saturday, culminating in a performance at the Follinger Hall on Saturday. That's really exciting. We're very, very proud of you. So congratulations again. Would now like to congratulate the district spelling bee participants and Dr. K. Please coming up we have Thomas Middle School students and South Middle School students. So go ahead. Thank you, Dr. Fitzpatrick.
So I have the honor of recognizing 6 students who just this afternoon participated in the District 25 spelling bee. So they've had a long day, which is probably why we don't have all of them here tonight, because they probably had just enough time to do their homework. But we do have some in the audience from the group. But let's start with Thomas Middle School. We have Vishnu Adija here. Also from Thomas Middle School, we have Emily Colton. Also from Thomas Middle School, we have Ryan Morgan. From South Middle School, Tyler Clark, Emily Hamilton, and the winner of this year's bee was Grace Barnes. So congratulations to Grace. Grace will now be advancing to the 13th Annual North Coast Regional Spelling Bee, which will be held on March 15th, with an opportunity to potentially move on to the national competition. So congratulations to all our spellers.
Yeah, very exciting.
And from
Good job.
we could ask those individuals who are recognized to come join us in the hallway for
Yes.
a group picture.
Yeah, Adam Harris would love to take a picture of for all our excellent students here. Thank you. And of course, parents and students, you're welcome to stay, but if you want to go and celebrate, please feel free to head home. Thank you so much and well done. Okay. Moving on, we're going to move on to the presentation of fiscal year audit report by Jason Quill from Baker Tilly. And thank you, welcome. And we truly appreciate the work of our business office staff under the direction of Mrs. Stacy Malik as they prepared for the detailed financial audit that is done annually. We have a presentation here, and we're looking forward to hearing from you today.
Well, thank you. It's good to be with you, Jason Quill. I'm a partner with Baker Tilly. And I thank Stacy and her team as well for all their help during the audit. As you can imagine, we come in and ask a lot of questions and ask for a lot of information, and we know she has a day job on top of dealing with us when we're here to do the audit. So appreciate her and all her work. I'm going to go over the district's financial statements, which are as of the year ended June 30th. So a little bit old at this point, but it takes a while to get through the audit and get everything put together. And so you do issue what's known as an annual comprehensive financial statement. So it goes beyond what is actually required to be included within your financial statements. There's information at the beginning, and there's 10-year statistical information at the end. So I always congratulate organizations that actually issue that. It kind of gives you a higher level of transparency of your operations as to anybody who might be using your financial statements. So congrats on that. The page 1 of your financial statements, and it goes for 3 pages, is actually the opinion from our firm. Everything else within your rather large document is your financial information. But on page 1, 2, and 3 is the opinion from our firm. The format of the opinion looks a little bit different than this year if you were to compare it to last year because the audit standards changed, but the meaning of the opinion hasn't changed. And to summarize what it means is basically somebody could pick up the financial statements and rely on the information in there in all material respects as they evaluate the financial health of the district. And so our opinion is an unmodified or unqualified opinion, highest level of assurance that we can give over your financial statements, and that's unchanged from the type of opinion we'd issued in previous years. So congratulations on that. I know that financial statements are lengthy, but I always encourage governing body members and board members to read the next section called Management's Discussion Analysis. It's a few pages long, and it does a good job of kind of comparing the current year to previous years and pulls out some different highlights of what went on during the year that might be notable. So I won't go through it in detail, but I would encourage you, if you don't want to read through the entire financial statements, to kind of at least take some time to read through that Management's Discussion Analysis section. There are some nice charts in there. For example, there's a pie chart on where your revenue comes from. 68% of your revenue comes from, this is on page 9 if you're following along, comes in the form of property taxes. So, pretty significant portion of your funding comes from local property taxes. Similarly, right below that pie chart is one of where your expenses are going. And if you add some of those boxes up, instruction and people and instructional services and transportation, 83% of your expenditures are going directly towards the instruction and caring of students. That percentage hasn't changed from the previous year. I'll just touch on a couple things within the basic financial statements, the meat of your financial statements. Starting on page 13 is your statement of net position. This is a statement that you don't see on a monthly basis in your board packets and things like that. This only happens once a year when we do the audit, and this is where we take all the funds of the district and put them into one column instead of looking at all your funds individually. And we also put on all your long-term debt as a liability. Similarly, as an asset, we put on all of your capital assets, so your buildings, vehicles that you own, computers and things like that get placed on here as well. And again, those are some things that you don't see on a regular basis in your monthly board packets. In addition, one of the larger liabilities of most governments in Illinois is pension liabilities. And you have those included on here as well. Happy to say that that liability is going down for you every year as you meet your required contributions to those funds. At the bottom of this, it does show a negative unrestricted net position, and that's largely because of those pension liabilities being so significant. It puts the net position into a deficit. But like I said, you're meeting your required contributions to those pensions on a regular basis. You knew this year was a standard that was implemented related to leases. I should point that out as well. So again, if you were to compare this from last year to this year, you'd see a couple new lines on here related to leases. So in particular, you lease out certain portions of your buildings and under long-term leases to other organizations. And so what's happening now under the new leases standard is all that revenue that you're going to receive in the future is now shown as a receivable. And then there's a liability or a deferral, as we call it, related that offsets that. But it's basically providing the user of the financial statement some information about your longer term leases that, in your case, you have revenue coming in. The flip is applicable as well. If you have longer term leases where you're paying money out, that would be shown as a liability. So that's new this year. Again, just a couple more points. On page 18 is your funds. These are the funds you're used to seeing on a regular basis. In here, we have one fund called your general fund, which for you is a combination of 3 funds: your ed fund, your tort fund, and your working cash fund. Overall, though, your fund balance has increased by $1.8 million. And one of the ratios I always like to look at is in your main operating funds, so your general fund, what's the ratio of your expenses to your fund balance? Again, this incorporates working cash in your case, but you're at 56%. So that basically means you could theoretically go a little over half a year without receiving any revenue in that fund and still be able to meet your operational expenses. So. Alongside this bound report you have in front of you, we also put together what's called an AFR, annual financial report, that gets submitted to the state, to ISB. One of the things in there I'd like to point out, ISB does a ranking based upon different aspects, cash on hand, long-term debt, things like that. And you continue to be in what they call financial recognition, which is the highest level of the 4 levels that you can have. So, congratulations on that. The last 2 points is we also do some audits of your federal grants under what we call the Single Audit Act. And so we audit those for all the different compliance aspects that you have to follow and how you spend those funds. Happy to say we had no findings in regards to how you're spending those funds. And finally, we do look at your internal controls when we do the audit. We don't give an opinion on your internal controls, but if there's anything that comes to our attention that we would recommend we see some improvement on, we definitely want to communicate that to you. Happy to say for similar to previous years, we don't have anything that we would recommend improvement upon in your internal control structure. So congratulations on that as well. That really concludes my prepared remarks, but I'm happy to take any particular questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Coyle. Maybe I'll turn it over to Ms. Malik if you have anything to say at this point, and then open it up to the board as well.
The only other thing I would add is in the annual financial report, this is the document that we submit for the national award every year, and there is a recognition from the year before, 2021, that we did get that award, and we have submitted it again for the 2022 year. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but this is the report to the board on the internal controls.
Yeah, that's a document where if we had any formal improvements that we would document and put them before you for review, we'd put that within that document. So again, happy to say that we didn't have anything that met the criteria that needed to be documented and put before you. There is some other information in there regarding, what the audit is and the purpose of the audit and things like that, but nothing in regards to internal control recommendations.
Thank you so much, Mr. Coyle. Any other comments, questions from my colleagues?
Madam President,
Yes, Gina.
when you do the review over the internal controls, is it just over the, what essentially would be the business process controls, nothing over the IT controls?
Not all your IT controls. I mean, we do look over some of your IT controls to the extent it relates to the business office, so you have a general ledger package related to that maintains all your financial information. So we do look over some of the internal controls over that. On the IT level, make sure that passwords are being changed regularly and stuff like that. But we don't look at, could somebody hack your IT system from external to the district? That'd be a different type of service.
Okay, and do you do any reviews over our third-party vendors and any of their potential SOC 1 Type 2s? If
need be. I can't recall if, with your particular audit, if there's any organizations that we would need to. The time that comes up is if you're self-insured and you need to basically, outsourcing the Blue Cross Blue Shield or something like that to process your claims, we'll get a SOC report from those organizations. Again, I can't remember in particular for your audit if that was applicable or not, but that's usually the only time where we have to seek out a SOC report.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Coyle, and we at District 25 always, as a school board, being financially responsible, that's one of our highest responsibilities, and so getting that highest level of recognition is really great. Every year we get it, so we're excited that you're submitting it again, and we're looking forward to the same good news. So thank you so much, Mr. Quill, for being with us today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
You too. Okay, moving on to board communications. The first item is board member updates. Any updates from my colleagues? I feel like the weeks are just, today we felt like it's not Tuesday, we felt like it's like Thursday. We've already had a busy week as board members, and I know our educators have too. So I can't think of any updates from my end today. My colleagues? No, yeah. But Ed Red, Stacy, any comments from Ed Red, any updates?
The only meeting there's been since the last board meeting was the dinner last night, which I was not in attendance in, but I know some board members were, so if there's anything from that.
Yeah, I can start off, Rich, Greg, myself, Dr. Bine, Dr. Kay, Dr. Fitzpatrick, we were all at the Ed Red Legislative Dinner last night. It was very well attended, and it was a great time to connect with school leaders, legislators, school board members across the northwest suburbs, and really great to connect and hear about everything that's going on. So that was great. Anything else, Greg, that you want to add to? And the dinner was good too.
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay. And then as far as IASB, I was at a lunch meeting today for ISB, and Greg was there too, so I'm going to allow Greg to chime in about our meeting this afternoon.
So this, at lunch, we had the first of a series of 3 discussions around the book.
High conflict.
Thank you. High Conflict, which written by Amanda Ripley, and Amanda was a keynote speaker at the III conference, and it was a wonderful, wonderful keynote session. And so Anisha and I are participating in this book study. And then, so we just dipped our toe into the book. We did the intro and first 2 chapters. But I really appreciated, so events like these can be motivation to get those aspirational books off the nightstand and into my hands and read them. So, and it's a great book so far, just providing context for the difference between good conflict and high conflict. And so we got to explore it with some colleagues from around the state, right, in our small groups. So it's a great event.
Yeah, and it was really well attended. There were 60 school board members and administrators who attended, and so great conversations. And I always appreciate that our board, we always have, and it is important to have constructive conversations and have those diverse perspectives and not be conflict averse, but really talk about from our community, from all of us, what are those perspectives, and surface them so we can resolve them and talk about them, right? So it was definitely a good exercise and a great book. You know, at any point, if school board members, we have 2 copies, so feel free, we'll share our notes from those meetings as well. So next update from NSSEO. Gina, any updates?
No, I was not at Belmont.
Okay. We will move on to community input. And at this point, I welcome our community as always. The board, on behalf of the board, the opportunity to speak to the board is provided for members of the public who have a comment to make about the business of the board. The board appreciates hearing from stakeholders and values your thoughts and questions. As the board strives to make the best decisions for the district, public input can be helpful. In order for the board to reserve sufficient time to conduct its business and to operate its meeting in the spirit of civility and decorum, speakers are expected to follow these guidelines. Number 1, address the board only at the time provided on the agenda and only after being recognized by the board president. And number 2, identify yourself and be brief. Your comments must be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. And the board may shorten this allowed time in order to conserve time to allow the maximum number of people the opportunity to speak. And please be respectful and courteous. And the board requests that you not make any statements that are personally disrespectful and condescending to members of the board or our staff. And the board typically does not respond to comments or attempt to answer questions during the public comment period, but we do listen intently and appreciate the input from our community. And of course, as you all know, you can always get a hold of the board by emailing us at any time. You will hear back from I as the board president, always answer emails on behalf of the board, and you can always email Dr. Bine, and she will always get back to you as well. So at this point, thank you, Brian. Ms. Sheila Cruz. Welcome.
Thank you, and Happy New Year. I'm back, like an old penny. I'm back. Nothing prepared, just wanting to let you know that I may not be here in person, but I am watching the videos, the YouTubes, and am interested in where my tax dollars are going and how you are moving forward, being transparent and working with parents in the community, as well as some of the administrators, and looking over the books especially. That was and has been my concern for several months. I'm just disappointed that there are so many books that don't promote a positive image for some of the kids to view the police, to view their parents, to view how to handle problems and resolutions. And I'm glad that there was a lot of discussion on the 10th regarding some of the books. I would hope that you have parents on those book review committees parents of students that go to the school now. And I would also like to suggest that maybe you invite a taxpayer or two that maybe doesn't have kids like myself that go to the school anymore. I think that would be very transparent and very welcome. But I do appreciate that you're moving forward and you're looking at them and reading these books and looking at how the children can best benefit from some of the lessons that are not being taught. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public comment is from Melissa Kerr.
Hello, Melissa Kerr speaking. The Baker Tilly auditing firm, they also did District 214's audit, and that was presented at their meeting last Thursday, and it was attached to their board book agenda. Will you attach this report to the board docs agenda so I can look at it?
Yeah, thanks for the
Thanks.
question.
And then turn off the public Wi-Fi when the buildings are closed to save energy. And how did that ABC 25 members only student function go?
Thanks for the questions, Melissa. We'll move on to the next question with William. I can't read that last name. William, welcome.
I went to the Design Commission and I realized that I wasn't supposed to be there with the concerns I had. So I came here. I thought this started at 7:30, so I was a little late. But anyhow, I got my tax bill. Everybody got their tax bill and paid it. And I noted that my tax bill, 37% of my tax bill went to District 25. And the tax rate was I think 370, which is a little higher than the 3.344% that you guys were touting in this little flyer here when you were trying to get us. So I was trying to figure out, how do I figure out where a $400,000 home, what their tax rate is? I couldn't find any in my neighborhood, except I did find one that was 409, and their taxes for District 25 was $4,186.13. Their rate and their assessment is going up almost $70,000, so it's $470,000. So I did the math based on the meeting, and the bond is going to cost this particular individual $352.80. That's an 8.4% increase over his $4,186. The 5.7 assessment that you're going to do because of just general inflation is going to add $238.61. So $591.11 if he doesn't attack his assessment. That $591.11 is a 14.1% increase. And so going into the future, at a minimum, everybody's assessment is going up 7.2% at a minimum. With the new assessment this year, it's probably going to go up to 8% or more. That's just the base. So that increase is going to add, I think it's going to be 14.1. Your document said 11.4. And the interesting part about it is that if you were, we talk about transparency, but I didn't see anywhere in this document that this $300 would represent a 7.2% increase, and that would be in addition to whatever increase you were going to have, which was 5.7. So on a going forward basis, this all-day kindergarten, in which we now have 411 students as opposed to 471, and total enrollment is going down, and yet every time I watch you guys, you said it again today, fiscal responsibility is one of our highest duties. We have to be fiscally responsible. You guys made the most fiscally irresponsible decision to go forward with this referendum to build 25 classrooms, of which most of them you don't need for all-day kindergarten, okay? And what's interesting is in your own documents, you're only preparing 49% of your students for high school. So that's a failing grade as far as I can understand and I can see. So the question is, why are we doing what we're doing? And if you're really fiscal, keep looking. If you
Yes, sir, it is
if you keep doing this, you're not going to be fiscally responsible. So
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I do want to remind you that as board president, it is my role to manage time. So if I do look over the clock, that's what I'm doing.
certainly understand it, but you always do that.
Yep, it's my job. Thank you. We will move on to the PTA report, communication from district partners, and Nicole cannot be here today. So I actually have a report from her. If you give me a second. Kind of lost her report. Yeah, I did have it up here. No, it's right here. I see. We have a lot of paperwork today. Well, we'll move on to the ABC 25 Foundation report first. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Thanks, I'll find it too. Go ahead, Gina. Thank you. Do you have the report for us?
I do. So first of all, ABC 25 has a meeting tonight, so the update I have is unfortunately not as current as I would like it to be because they're meeting concurrently while we are. We did conduct, as a foundation, we did conduct on the 16th our crime scene, our first members only activity, and we had an incredible turnout. And for those of you that did go, Professor Kloo, K-L-O-O, was really good. He did a really great job. He had all the kids involved in interacting. It was geared definitely more towards the younger students than it was our middle schoolers, but the kids were very well involved. They all solved the crimes very well, and it was a very interactive way to do it. So it was a huge success, in my opinion. I was there, and we had a great turnout. Next up, everything is turned toward the race. So the ABC 25 Challenge is occurring on April 15th, 2023. You guys are going to get tired of hearing me say that right up until race day. And I would encourage everybody in the community to come along, grab a friend, bring the whole family out, and enjoy the event that is planned for that day.
Thank you so much, Gina. That was a great, the event that the ABC 25 hosted was wonderful, and it was very interactive, and the kids all had their hands up and really enjoyed it. Actually, I went with my son, and when we walked away, he was like, "Mom, can there be more things like this?" So he was really excited. So thanks to ABC 25 Foundation volunteers, and for Gina for double duty, like, you know, she's our board member, but she also serves on that committee. So thank you so much to you for all that you do and for all that the foundation does for our schools, our teachers. So with the PTA report, I'm going to go back to that. We have a little summary from Nicole, our Arlington Heights Council PTA president, and here it is for you. The Arlington Heights Council of PTAs is accepting applications for their 2020-2023 High School Senior Scholarship Program, and 6 Achievement and 3 Power of Courage scholarships will be given out this year in the amount of $1,000 each. The Arlington Heights Council is seeking applicants who are high school seniors and spent at least 3 years in Arlington Heights School District 25. And applications are due on February 26th, and the scholarship breakfast will be held on April 27th, 2023. And high school guidance counselor offices have received the applications. Students can visit the ahcpta.org for an application as well. And if you have any questions, contact d25scholarship@gmail.com. It's just a wonderful opportunity that our Council of PTAs provides our seniors, and the breakfast that they host is truly a really meaningful and almost emotional event. People had told me when I attended last year, I was warned that I should bring Kleenex, and I didn't, and I regretted it because it was the stories the students shared about how Arlington Heights, the District 25 has impacted them was truly something to hear and made me very happy as a parent in the community and as a board member. So thank you to the PTA for all their hard work. Next up, we have ATA. Allison, please join us.
Hello and good evening. I would like to start with to highlight some exciting things going on across the district before I focus only on Dryden tonight. Many schools just hosted their second BPAC event this year, and that stands for the Bilingual Parent Advisory Committee. This event takes place in the evenings at some of our schools where parents whose children participate in our multilingual program can come to the school and learn about the various aspects of that program, and there are both school and community resources available for parents at that event. This week, all elementary schools are participating in Digital Awareness Week. This was designed to be a fun way to promote good digital citizenship. Each day focuses on a different idea. So Monday was Inclusive Day, which promoted being a good sport online, and students were encouraged to wear sports jerseys to school. Today was To Be Informed Day, and to promote awareness of the sources students use online. We're to use our heads, so today was Hat Day, hence my flat hair because I wore a hat all day at school today. Wednesday, tomorrow, the focus is going to be on being engaged and to be a force for good online. So students are encouraged to dress like superheroes tomorrow. I can't wait to see what they all come to school as tomorrow. Thursday is to promote being balanced and to take a break from tech. So students are encouraged to wear pajamas on Thursday. And Friday is to promote awareness and to teach students to protect their digital footprint. So we are all encouraged to wear silly socks on Friday. So it's a great way to promote tech awareness for our kids and to promote digital citizenship, and the kids are having a great time doing it. The fifth graders in Miss Pinsky's room at Windsor School are participating in a cultural exchange with the Fuda Buckeye School. Actually, this is Miss Pinsky's 21st exchange with that school. Our students visit their school and their students visit ours as a part of a year-long partnership to learn about another culture and to broaden student learning, which is pretty awesome. And now I'm going to switch gears over to the top 5 things about Dryden Elementary School as told by Dryden students. So number 1 is the people. All of our people there at Dryden, you can see all dressed up at the bottom, and the students participating in all kinds of fun events, and their dolphin up at the top, their mascot. Special events are very special at Dryden. Students participate in grade level musicals. Students and staff participated in a walk to school day. Dryden has special assemblies that the students often enjoy. Dryden also participated in hosting a Veterans Day breakfast and assembly. And finally, I believe there is one picture up there of the ever famous Halloween parade. There it is at the bottom. Another great thing about Dryden is their creativity. So Dryden students participate in personalized learning, where students can choose a topic of interest to research and then share that with their peers. Students also took part in a cardboard challenge, and these are just some of the fun projects that show student learning. Students at Dryden have fun spaces to play. Tomorrow should be super exciting with snow on the ground. We cannot wait. And students at Dryden are making memories. The students at Dryden participate in a fun school-wide winter wonderland every year. Students at all grade levels get to experience field trips and extend their learning and bring real-life experiences to the classroom. Dryden offers club opportunities for students like chess club, and many students enjoy other special projects. And then I have a cute picture down there of our first graders enjoying Pumpkin Day every fall. So thank you for providing me the opportunity to share Dryden with you this evening. Next board meeting, I will spotlight Greenbrier. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Allison, and way to go, Dryden Dolphins. Allison, I feel like to support the digital awareness, we should all have the PJ Day going on. What day was that? Thursday? Okay, Thursday. Brian and I. Yeah, we're in solidarity. Okay, now we'll move on to the consent agenda portion. And this is an action item. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
Madam President,
Yes, Greg.
I move that the Board of Education approve those items on the consent agenda as follows. A, personnel report. B, invoices. C, board bills. D, regular and closed session meeting minutes of January 10th, 2023. E, approve selected policies from Press 110.
Thank you, Greg. A second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Brian. Lana, please could you call the vote?
Member Joby?
Yes.
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Member Faso?
Yes.
Member Cerniglia?
Yes.
Thank you, Lena. Moving on to business and finance, our next item was discussed at our last meeting, and the board expressed interest in moving forward with making this an action item. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
Madam President,
Yes, Greg.
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution directing the Cook County Clerk to abate the increase in the 2022 real estate tax levy due to Section 18-233 of the Property Tax Code.
Thank you, Greg.
Second.
Thank you, Brian. Mrs. Malik, if you could recap the purpose of this item for us, please?
Sure. In fall of 2021, the legislature passed legislation that automatically applied to taxing bodies. Tax extensions will be an amount equal to the refunds issued in the prior calendar year through, I think, November and early 1st of November, and we find out the information then November 15th. So as discussed at the last meeting, this resolution, once acted on by the board, we will submit to the county clerk to be sure that the county clerk, by choosing to abate this amount, we're asking the county clerk not to extend it out to our taxpayers. We're foregoing this additional tax amount so that it won't apply and show up on the 2022 tax bills paid in 2023.
Madam President?
Yes, Greg. Thank you, Mrs. Malik.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you. Any questions, comments, Greg?
So you've explained this before to us, Stacy, and I'm going to ask a question or maybe make a statement. You can tell me if I've got it right. So in layperson's terms, so these are, sorry, now I lost the term. So if I contest my property taxes and the Cook County says, you're correct, Greg, that money, instead of going somewhere, right, it doesn't get redistributed at that bill. It can't. So this is money that Cook County said we should have had, but it can't get redistributed till the next year. Is that correct?
Correct, because usually the refunds, by the time they go through the process, the year that they're associated with, those bills have already gone out. So it's already a later year that there's no way for the taxing body to collect that amount. The county clerk can't redistribute it.
Yeah.
So now they've created this recapture levy that is automatic unless the taxing body chooses to forego it.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm highlighting here is this would have been part of our previous levy, but we are choosing to abate it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. Any other questions, comments? Thank you. Let us, Lana, if we could take this to a vote, please.
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Member Faso?
Yes.
Member Cerniglia?
Yes.
Member Joby?
Yes. And then, now, the next item is an information item about the district's 5-year financial forecast. So Stacy, if you could please share your report with the board at this time.
As soon as I can get the clicker.
Thanks, Adam.
And that's okay, hopefully it'll work from here because I always seem to have trouble. Yep.
Thanks, Adam.
Okay, tonight I'm going to go through our assumptions for the next 5 years in terms of our revenue and our expenditures, present the projections, talk about funding for capital projects, discuss our fund balance goal, and then identify some takeaways and options for future consideration. So in terms of our total revenue, as I think you heard our auditor indicate, property taxes make up the largest source of our revenues. And CPI for our property taxes, the 2022 levy the CPI was 7%, so we're capped at a 5% increase. And for 2023, the CPI was released last week. It's 6.5%, so we would be capped again at a 5% increase. It's the first time since the mid-90s that CPI has ever reached that 5% cap level. This increases the 10-year average CPI from a 1.9% increase to a 2.28% increase. New growth in our community averages about 0.7% of new EAV every year. And these projections will continue to anticipate that we will refund taxes beginning with the 2022 levy, because that recapture abatement that you just voted on is an annual decision that the board has to vote on. So I'm assuming in the future we will continue to abate that unless the decision is made otherwise. This is going.
Stacy, real quick to that point, you would bring that up as a recommended action item, the way we just did it, right? In 1 to 2 meetings, depending on whether or not we need the refresher. Right?
Correct.
Off the top of your head, and you probably don't know this, but I'm just curious, I'm thinking about it, is this, I mean, we're almost at $1 million of what we just debated, right? Is that pretty typical? I don't recall.
Last year was under 600,000.
Yeah.
So an average over the last 8 years is about 900,000. It really depends on the year. The Cook County Assessor's Office is trying to, if I might say, get better at assessing properties so that there's not as many refunds or claims or appeals, but there's a lot of pieces that go into that, equalization across the state and everything else. So yeah, it would, this year I don't know that it's over $800,000. I think I said it was about $45 or $47. It would have been an increase in the tax bills next year, again, on an average $400,000 home. So I would guess on average over time would be around $900,000. State revenue at this point is pretty flat in terms of the evidence-based funding model. We get about $4.9 million from the state through that model, and an additional just over $1 million for transportation reimbursement. That's pretty much the only state funding we receive. In the graph on the slide here, you can see the gray bar that represents our largest amount of federal funds. That's special ed funding through the IDEA formula, and that's based on our student enrollment for kids who have IEPs that qualify for funding. And that money has to then go back, and that's how we fund a number of our TAs in our classroom for the special ed program. The bright green bars you can see in the first couple years, that's our temporary federal funding. That's the ESSER money that's been coming through, and will continue to come through 24-25. The last claim year is 23-24, but we submit claims for reimbursement after the fact, so there's a lag. As those revenues go away, the offsetting expenditures that are in our expense budget are also removed from the forecast. And then the bright blue line is our other large source of federal funding. That's the National School Lunch Program money, and that is back to the pre-COVID levels. If you recall last year when I did this, we had a significant inflow of money for the summer food program when they were paying for everybody, but this is now more typical in terms of our regular school year funding. Local revenues, our largest source of local revenues right now is the corporate personal property replacement tax. That's $3 million. That's determined by the state on an annual basis. That can range anywhere from in the $100,000 range to the last couple of years it's been closer to the $3 million range. Our rental agreements for random minor schools that are around $1 million in total, and then our student fees, which represent a small portion of the budget at just over $300,000. The two graphs here show our actual interest income versus the federal funds rate chart. And as I've indicated in the past, our interest earnings fairly closely align with the federal funds rate. We used to get a couple $1 million a year in interest income with interest rates basically at zero over the last number of years. We've seen a significant decline in that source of revenue. Right now, the federal fund rate projections are 4.63% in 2023, 3.88 in 2024, and back to 2.5 in the long term. So I'm using a 4%, 3%, and 2% because we don't ever hit those exactly in the first 3 years of this projection, and then 2% in the long term. This chart just shows you the makeup of our revenue sources. Again, you can see that 80% of our revenues come from local taxes, and that amount only continues to grow unless there is some change in the state funding formula or the federal funding. As those remain flat, then property taxes make up a larger source of our total revenue. On the expenditure side, sorry, my computer's very sensitive. In terms of our ed fund, our largest fund, salaries are based on actual current staff and the negotiated agreements, which we are now in a 4-year contract with our Arlington Teachers Association. It does include about $1.3 million in full-day kindergarten staffing beginning with the 24-25 school year. That includes 20.5 kindergarten FTE, 1.2 FTE for additional specials teacher, which would be art, music, and PE for the full-day kindergarten classrooms, and additional food service staffing. We project three unknown retirements annually. Benefits, the board has a 6% cap on the increases that is negotiated with our teachers union. We have our pension costs that are tied to salary. I continue to anticipate a shift in from the state in pension costs to the local school districts. I just move it out a year, so starting in the 24-25 year at about 0.5% a year. Miscellaneous, there's a reduction, as I indicated before. As our federal temporary funds go away through ESSER, the expenditures are also then removed from these projections. In terms of purchase services and supplies, I projected about a 2% increase in the purchase services, some of our agreements, maintenance contracts, licenses, things like that. We had almost $1 million in the current year for our math curriculum adoption, so that comes out in the future years. We added a 1-to-1 K2 iPad program when COVID hit, so those devices are coming up for replacement next year, so that's additional $765,000 included for next year. We have some tech infrastructure costs that will be coming up, $380,000 next year for switches, and then in 27-28 another $270,000. I believe that's access points replacements. We had cafeteria tables budgeted, almost $200,000 in the current year. That will again come out in the future. Tuition is remaining flat because although we have a large number of 8th grade special ed students leaving us this year, we are seeing just as many incoming students coming in through our EC program, moving on into kindergarten and the older grades. And then as always, the contingency that's included in the budget is projected to go forward. So any of the contingency money that's not spent obviously has a positive impact on the district. In our operations and maintenance fund, covering all of our facility costs, again, we have a projected negotiated agreement with our SEIU union that's incorporated here. We, as indicated in our planning for full-day kindergarten, expect to add about $97,000 worth of custodial staff beginning in 24-25 to support the building additions. The benefits are tied to the same health insurance cost as the teachers union. I have 1% on purchase services, 1.5% annually on supplies. Some of that includes like natural gas and electricity. So again, over the course of 5 years, to incorporate those kind of rate changes up and down both directions. We projected an increase in our overall utility costs beginning in 24-25 of $37,000 for the additional building capacity. We have $60,000 a year for the district vehicle replacement. And this also includes continues our $3 million annual amount that we've transferred to capital projects to support those projects, as well as now that we are actually earning some interest, anticipating transferring working cash fund interest to the capital projects fund to also assist in funding future projects. The debt service fund, that represents both the levy on our bonds as well as the associated bond payments that are established at the time of the bond sale. There's nothing incorporated in these projections for, we issued the $60 million in bonds this past year, but we have $15 million remaining that we haven't issued. It won't anticipate deciding on probably until 2025, so there's nothing in this forecast that anticipates that. Annual increase for bus transportation, 5% for next year, although I don't have an actual proposal on that yet, and 3% thereafter. I am hearing from other districts they're seeing double digits as they're still struggling to find bus drivers, but hope to have that soon for the board. The IMRF Social Security Fund is strictly the pension costs, FICA, Medicare, and IMRF tied to the associated salaries. And then our tort fund, it covers all of our risk management insurance and anticipating a 9% annual increase based on our last 5 years in that fund. Capital Projects Fund, it's based on our 5-year facility master plan that was updated and presented to the board back in December. Our 2023 summer projects are anticipated at $5.6 million. The 5-year total cost is about $34.3 million based on that new 5-year plan. Life safety, right now we're just anticipating about $200,000 a year for the next 5 years, where we've finished the majority of the work from our last 10-year life safety survey, and we'll be required to have a new 10-year life safety survey coming up in 2025. So based on that, and hopefully you can see it on your screen, you can see we ended the year 21-22 at about 58% fund balance. I think the auditor mentioned 56. This is his has all got accruals and deferrals all mixed in. This is strictly revenue and expenditures for the current year. I don't anticipate accruals and deferrals, so our numbers aren't exactly the same as the audit. So I have 58% fund balance based on what's actually sitting in our reserves as of June 30th. We sold the $60 million in bonds in the current year, so you can see that highlighted on the screen here, bringing our anticipated fund balance at the end of this year to about 81%, and then seeing a large portion of those expenditures occurring in the 23-24 school year, and 24-25, which is when the highlights represent the addition of the personnel for full-day kindergarten, bringing our fund balance down to the 64% level. Highlighted that as of right now, anticipating the bond sale of the $15 million, which would bring our fund balance back up in 25-26, and because those funds are designed to support not only full-day kindergarten, but the 5-year capital projects plan from summer of 22. So bringing our fund balance down at the end of the 5 years to 68%. This chart just shows that, again, personnel costs consistently represent the majority of our budget, 80% of our budget. This excludes the capital projects and the debt, especially because of right now, because of the timing. It fluctuates different each year, so it really makes this look out of whack. So this is just our typical annual budget without the debt service or capital projects. So this chart you've seen before. The yellow line represents our new projected fund balance. Again, you see the spike in 22-23 in both the revenue line and in the yellow fund balance line. That's because we sold the $60 million in bonds, but haven't spent those funds yet. Then going through 23-24 and 24-25, when our expenditures exceed our revenues, that's when we're spending those bond funds on the building additions. You can see at that point, the circled area, that's when our fund balance goes back down to right above that 60% goal level. And then the additional bond sale in fall of '25, fiscal year '25-26, and then our expenditures remain consistent. Revenues are tied to expenditures beyond that, and we just a very slight decline in the fund balance level, but staying above that 60% goal. In terms of the funding for capital projects, that was something that has been asked by the board for us to have a plan for. So the 5-year facility plan currently totals $34 million. Again, that's summer '23 to summer '27. When we sold the referendum bonds, that was to cover the 5-year plan from summer '22 to summer '26, and it does. We, as Ryan presented in December, we should, based on all of our facilities, our useful lights, our asset values, we should expect about a $6.57 million annual spend in capital projects. In '22-23, we are transferring $4.9 million from our O&M fund to our capital projects fund to help fund projects beyond summer '26. Next year, the projections include transferring $3.5 million and $3 million for every year thereafter, as well as transferring the working cash fund interest to the capital projects fund. It would be my expectation that, again, based on all of these assumptions without change to them, and with a disclaimer that any kind of financial projection beyond 5 years becomes significantly less reliable due to so many factors outside of our control. Based on this model here, it would be my expectation that we would have capital projects funded through at least 2032. So beyond the 5 years, I guess 10 years, roughly. Again, at least. So that was something that was asked of us to start planning for. In terms of fund balance and the 60%, just a reminder, that was a goal the board set. Ironically, we'd started talking about 40 to 60%, which is why we had that 40% line on the graph as well, because the tax bills were going out for the last number of years on time. But the 60% fund balance goal was set at a time that tax bills went out and weren't due to December. And as soon as we're starting to get to a comfort level, last year tax bills went out and weren't due to December. What does that mean? We measure our fund balance as of June 30th. So when I say, or the auditor says we have a 58% fund balance, that's as of June 30th. That means we can get through 58% of our fiscal year before we run out of money if we've gotten no revenue come in. Well, since taxes are our largest revenue source, if we're not getting any of that money in until December or January, we need to have 50% at least sitting in the bank, or we have to sell debt, notes, tax anticipation warrants, which have an interest rate on them, to pay our payroll and our accounts payable until the tax dollars come in. So that's where that 60% fund balance goal came in, because we also have debt payments due December 1st on top of getting through the 50% of our school year. In terms of takeaways, I think this is a much healthier financial projection than we've seen in a while. We are still tied to a 10-year average CPI of 2.28% on the revenue side, while we can't control all of the expenditures that we see the increases in. We don't know about property tax reform. It's talked about in the legislature every year. We continue to see unfunded mandates at the state level. On the positive side, we have tied our salaries to CPI. We've had 2 years of 5% CPI, unheard of, never anticipated, would have never believed we would hit that, especially for 2 years. We're seeing higher investment earnings. State funding is stable. It's not increasing, but it's not fluctuating like it used to, and the state's not behind in paying. We're anticipating pension reform is coming. The tax refunds, we're abating them, but should there be a need in the future based on future decisions, or unless that legislation changes, that might be an option to recapture some of those taxes. And then we have fund balance that helps us get through some of these issues like delayed taxes, as well as any major changes in anything. We have some time to make some decisions without having to disrupt completely everything we're offering in the school district. In terms of options for future consideration, we need to complete the bid process for full-day kindergarten building additions. So we have a range from when we did the projections and the cost calculations, even with the construction management team. We're still working with the village and going through that process. So we still have yet to firm up, because they haven't even gone out to bid on what those costs will be. So once we get all those costs come in, and I'd love to see it come in at the low end of what we projected, but we'll see. Then in late fall of 2023, I'll come to you to talk about the 2023 levy. I think at that time, and based on these financial projections, there are some things the board might want to look at in terms of possibly abating our debt service levy. That's something you could do on an annual basis. And the impact wouldn't be cumulative, so you could reduce the amount of the levy for 1 year and pay our debt service payment out of general tax dollars. We could abate a portion of the 2023 levy. That impact then is cumulative and permanent. And we can continue to abate the recapture levy amount. That impact is not cumulative. And then again, by late fall of 2025, determine if any or all of that $15 million of remaining bond capacity, the bonds we haven't sold yet, determine if we'll need that, because we'll know what our costs have come in, we'll know where we stand financially, and if our fund balance, if we can keep it within our board goal but not excessively above that, then that might be an option that we have as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy, for kind of the diligence that you put towards this fiscal responsibility piece and now strategic plan, which clearly states that as a board and as the goal is to demonstrate stewardship by allocating resources effectively and equitably. So we really appreciate all the time that you take and all your expertise in this area. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Any other questions, comments?
Madam President?
Yes, Greg.
Stacy, if you could indulge me with a couple just clarifying questions. Could you talk a little bit about the EBF and why it's staying flat?
Mm-hmm. EBF looks at your access to local resources, okay, which we are a wealthier district in terms of our property EAV. And it's assigned state dollars. The formula used to be based on student enrollment completely. So every individual student that was enrolled in the district counted, their attendance counted, for dollars to the district. Now the formula is based on, okay, a typical elementary school is 450 students. There should be a principal for that school, so we're going to fund a principal. There should be X number of teachers for a 450 student school, so there should be that number of teachers and speech paths and psychologists and nurses. It's more formula driven by certain numbers of staff assigned per groups of students. So if you add 5 students, it doesn't mean you necessarily get any additional money. You have to add a large enough group of students to increase the number of staff that go with that number of students, if that makes sense. So that's why, we're anticipating over the next 5 years an increase at Westgate, I think, of about 50 students or something. But that doesn't translate into 50 individual students worth of additional state funding.
Right. And so when we hear about that, even if it's not fully funded from the state, that isn't necessarily going to impact us, right? Because of what tier we're at?
Correct. So we are a tier 3 district. So tier 4 gets the least amount of funding. Tier 1 gets the highest amount of funding. Tier 1 and tier 2 schools would be districts that typically would be in the southern part of the state where the majority of their revenue comes from the state. So when they say it's not fully funded, the formula has a certain amount of funding to it, and then there's an additional piece that the legislature determines every year to put in. That additional funding is to get those tier 1 and tier 2 schools to a higher funding level. We aren't eligible, or if we are, it might be $100,000 versus another district might be getting, $12 million.
Okay, thank you. Could you talk, I want to make sure I caught it right. So the pension shift the possible shift that you budget in, did I hear you right? So you bump it out year to year just in case, right? Basically?
I do, because and the reason I incorporate the pension shift, there's been a lot of different legislative conversations about pensions in the state and how to impact taxing or shift the cost of taxing bodies. They've talked about, well, if your fund balance is over 50%, you're going to start paying X percent more. The 0.5% a year shift was at the legislative level, had the most conversation behind it and the most, I'd say, maybe detailed plan. So while it hasn't come to fruition yet, that conversation is outgoing. So I just continue to shift it. Like, if it were going to happen next year, we'd know by now.
Yeah.
So now I've got it out 2 years. I keep it out 2 years, and it's a 0.5% a year. It is definitely one thing when we talk to the bond rating agencies, like when we sold our bonds, that they agree with 100% and appreciate the fact that it's built into your projections, because they also, recognizing the state of Illinois has issues, like to see districts planning that if something happens, we're ready for it.
Okay, thank you. In slide 13, at the far right of the graph that you have there, if I'm reading my notes properly, you show, it looks like revenue and expenses are going to kind of come together toward at the far end of the projection.
Correct.
Is that a nature of how far out you're projecting, or is there something other in a positive sense that seems like a good place to be if we're meeting both those together?
No, so that is intentional. That's because we're tying our largest expenditures, salaries, to CPI, which is our revenue source. And if those two line up, then that's how those tie out. But for our capital project costs that we had, when, we've been talking about for the last 18 months, 2 years. But for that, our operating expenses were closely tied together without any capacity to continue funding these capital costs. We had a significant amount of building done in this district in 1997. All of the HVAC equipment is all now 25 years old. It all is coming due at one time. So that's where we kind of hit this position now of we need the money to do some of these things all at once, with the idea that planning for the future will start pulling some money and putting it in that capital projects fund for future.
Okay, thank you. And so if you could, then the next slide, you talked about, funding for the future and doing the transfers. When we get to 2025, it's $3 million a year and going forward. So can you could say, well, the whole presentation leads us to that point, but could you talk about why that's sustainable at that point now? Is it because of the?
Well, as I said, if we need to fund at $6.5 million to never be put in this kind of situation again and never have to go out for a referendum, that doesn't get us indefinitely. Because as I said, if we're putting away, because we're putting away for the next 5 years, 4.9, 3.5, and 3. So we're going to save up, let's say, 15 million.
Okay.
Well, now we're going to continue saving 3, but we're going to spend 6. That's going to buy us another 5 or 6 years, but eventually that too wouldn't be sustainable.
Okay.
The part of the concern is it's really unreliable to projecting out that far because so many things could change in terms of how we teach, what the funding formula is, and we always have the option of delaying. I mean, that's really to just do everything as it comes up as needed, which I don't know any school district that does that. Everybody has to make decisions and defer and put stuff off when the money's not there to do it. And then you get to a point where you have to ask the community to help you get your buildings back up to par. I mean, I think you see it everywhere. We're trying to plan for it, but if we do all this work and we needed it 25 years ago and we have this big chunk to do now, we're probably 25 years from now going to have. We're trying to plan for that and maybe not have it be such a big hit. But I can't, I mean, I'm not comfortable with anything really. I disclaim anything beyond 5 years, let alone looking out 25 years.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so my last question, and thank you, is you talked about at the end here, you know, completing the bid process and then considering some options in the fall. When do you anticipate would be a good time to initiate that discussion, knowing that we passed the levy in December, we have the notice in November, if I'm not mistaken, so are we looking at August, September? Where do you think that's appropriate, considering the bid process as well?
Yeah, I know we certainly like to get out for bid. We believe we'll be able to get out for bid at least for the first phase by late spring. What we don't know about is phase 2, the other 3 buildings, and when, because we still, you know, we have to go through all the village meetings and then get out to bid. We'd love to get out to bid and have those numbers available in early fall.
Okay.
So I don't think certainly before August. But as we start bringing, I guess, if we start bringing second round bids to the board, then we'll certainly start being ready to talk about it. So we'll try to get on that.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get on it certainly before, you know, November, so we have extra time to talk about that.
Yeah, and I think that's, if Dr. Biden were here, and I'll say it to you, Dr. Jogi, is that, yeah, as we can, the earlier the better, just so we don't feel, we can have a quality discussion and maybe it might be over several meetings and we can consider all those options. But thank you, Stacey, really appreciate it.
Just the goal was just to kind of highlight, like, there's not really a decision to be made at this point until we start talking about another levy.
Well, thank you, Greg, and we'll take that into consideration. So thanks for bringing it up.
Madam President.
Yes, Gina.
Stacey, I want to just ask a few clarifying questions. So when you did the projection and looking out the 10 years, and you said you thought that our capital funding based on these savings and the 3 million versus the 6 million out, so you did take that under Ryan's advisement of the 6.57 million rate on annual, okay.
Correct.
And then bond, what's the term on the bond repayments?
All of our debt service extension rate debt expires in 2032. The new debt we issued, I have to look it up.
So what I'm looking to understand is you had said that, you know, 25 years ago, we had to go out to the community and ask for help to get buildings back up to par. I just want to make sure that we have completed our obligations to the existing debt before we would ever have to go back out and ask the community. And then I would also like to pose and understand why we couldn't, in theory, cover 6.5 million rate of capital since we know it now, and we have a few years to get ourselves into a better operating state for consideration, to just take a look and see if we can't improve upon that $3 million annual dollars that we're looking at today.
And we might be able to. I mean, every year we'll look at that and look at how we end up each year and what we can contribute the next year. This is just projecting out
Right.
3, 4, 5 years from now, which,
And considering we know that projections are difficult, I'd like to take a look at projecting it at the rate at which we potentially believe it's going to come in at Ryan's current recommendation.
so then that means we need to identify $3.5 million worth of cuts.
Opportunities. And then, because Greg covered some of my questions. The 60% target that you talked about for our general fund, that is, for lack of a better way to phrase it, due to potential state inconsistency on tax collection and distribution to be able to cover our bills?
Yes, the 60% is all funds. So just because the auditors define general fund differently, I just want to make sure. So
Sorry.
that's all funds. And that's because we measure it as of June 30th.
Right.
So it's the number, it's a percent of the fiscal year we need to be able to get through before we start seeing
The
tax
next year.
dollars come in.
Okay. And if you could just at some point look up what the term,
2043 is the last year we have a payment on the bonds we just sold.
okay, thank you.
Madam President.
Yes, Brian.
Stacy, could you refresh my memory a little bit, just off the top of your head, the ESSER funds? What were their, I know it's hard to look at the dollars on the graph when it's a little bar compared to some of the bigger ones. What were the dollar amounts roughly? And you know, you mentioned in the presentation that as those funds are we're still in the process of their, you know, essentially going away, we have to remove those like expenditures from our budget. Can you just give us a very quick high-level recap? What were those ESSER funds previously being used for, and what are we going to be foregoing in the future?
Yes. So the original ESSER funds were used to help fund the expansion of 1-to-1 down to K2, which we would now be absorbing into our regular budget starting next year. The ESSER 2 funds, ESSER 2 funds we used to fund Summer U in the summer of 2021, and then we purchased additional literacy resources for all of our classrooms and teachers, and we funded 1 year of 4 additional interventionists, staff interventionists, who we put at the district level, who then we looked at MAP scores in the fall and decided where we needed to place those interventions based on student needs to support those students. So ESSER 2 was about $677,000. That's all spent. ESSER 1 and 2 are done, spent, not in this year's budget even. So all that's left is ESSER 3. ESSER 3 was a total of 1.5 million, and that we're using to fund this year and next year of those same interventionists. So when we hired them, we told them it's 3 years, they're funded by grant money, and after those 3 years, those positions would not continue to exist. We paid for some of our quarantine classroom staffing during COVID. We covered Summer U of 2022. We covered some additional social emotional stipends for our teachers to work on our social emotional learning curriculum. We provided tutoring, after school tutoring during COVID, or during the first year kids returned from COVID, I should say. And again, math and literacy resources that couldn't be funded through ESSER 2, we funded out of ESSER 3.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't come close to remembering all that.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you to my board colleagues for your thoughtful questions this evening, and the report, the audit report that we heard, the report from Mrs. Malik today, and our discussion continues to maintain the high level of transparency that our district prides ourselves in. And the Baker-Tilly report, correct me, Stacy, is on the website too for our community, correct?
Correct. All of our prior audits, and this one, as soon as we got it, is posted on the district webpage under the business office, under financial reports.
Okay, thank you so much, Stacy. So our community can pour through, read exactly what the board has been going through, and continue to inform yourselves as well. Okay, we will now move on to personnel and planning. The board added, as you know, we're really happy that we added our new Director of Equity position this past July to align with the board's mission, actually, which is also up physically on the, I forget the podium, is that what we call it? Yeah, thank you, the tripod. The Empower, which is empower an inclusive, diverse community of learners to innovate and thrive as global citizens. And this hire was also in relation to the board's diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. So Mrs. Shah-Paulez is going to share an update with the board now that we have had the pleasure of having her as an administrator here for the last 6 months that she has been working through and implementing her new role. So welcome, Shab, and thank you for aligning your work to our strategic goals as far as the equity-focused strategic plan we have.
Thank you for having me. I am thrilled to be here and to provide you this equity journey presentation. And as I go through this presentation, it's a little different than Stacy's. There are no charts or graphs, but I hope to be able to capture what we have done in these phases. So I'd like to provide an introduction and background and moving on to phases of how we've divided this current school year. So my personal journey is up here, and I find this part to be important because it gives you a snapshot of collection of experiences that I've had that have created this passion and dedication to this equity work in our district. So I was born in Tehran, Iran. My family and I moved here when I was 8 years old, and I was a student that we typically call a newcomer. So a newcomer would be a student who comes here, experiences a new language, potentially culture shock, and ironically, we arrived in August, and school starts in August, right? So I had very little time to assimilate, and so my family and I relied on the support of school staff and figuring all of that out. And, you know, I was an ESL student, so you will notice different terminology up there, but we are talking about the same demographic of students. It's just at that time, we were referred to as ESL students. So for the entirety of 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade, I received services, which helped me become proficient in the English language. And, you know, my teachers provided this safe space, this environment where I felt valued, where I felt like I could achieve at high levels, and I loved school because of that. There was a sense of belonging, and I knew I wanted to create that for other students that were just like me. So my first job was being an ELL teacher. So at that point, it was English language learners in Skokie, where they were experiencing an increase in the demographics of their English language learners. And as I was doing that work and becoming more interested in leadership opportunities, I found the most perfect job here in District 25. And the job was an EL coordinator in the Department of Student Learning. And that year was the first year that that position became a position. So I got to create a path for that role, and I'm super proud of what we've done with our program. And that has led to this opportunity to be the Director of Equity and Multilingual Programming here starting this school year. So thank you for mentioning that. And concurrently, this year I am also a proud District 25 parent. And I wanted to take this opportunity, now that you've gotten to know me a little bit better, to let you know a little snapshot of what our growing diverse population looks like in our community that I'm so proud to live in and work in. Right now, these are the current numbers from last week. Those numbers do go up daily. So at this time, we have 574 multilingual students pre-K through 8th grade. Of course, we have families in our district who come from a multilingual background or a multicultural background that are not captured in that number because perhaps they never qualified for services or perhaps they exited our program. This number is strictly students who currently are receiving services based off of our state criteria. And that's about 10% of our district. That number has stayed pretty stable in the past several years because as students transition out of our program, we get new incoming kindergarten and so on. So the next bullet point of 118 new to the country within the last 3 years is incredible. That number is higher than we've traditionally had. This is our immigrant population. So these are families who are, the children were born in another country, have moved here within the past 3 years. And the next bullet point is truly remarkable. I wanted to make sure that everyone saw that. 21 countries. Albania, Brazil, Canada, Colombia, Czech Republic, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Guatemala, India, Italy, Japan, Macedonia, Moldova, Pakistan, Philippines, Poland, Russia, Spain, Tajikistan, Ukraine, and Venezuela have all arrived here within the last 3 years. So I know that this is important to our district, that we value the diversity and the perspective these students and families bring. And that goes to our next point of the displays behind me. As I came into this role, and even in my previous role, I knew that this district was doing what we valued. So just as, you know, a thank you to you all, I wanted to let you all know that these documents are in various parts of the district office, and I refer to them often. So I know that in July 2020, we had the resolution for the board's commitment to eliminate racial injustice. We have the Board of Education adopting the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Policy in August of 2020. And then in April 2021, we had the strategic plan that had the DEI framework was embedded throughout all the threads and all the goals. So I'm super proud of that, and thank you for all the work you've done because it's created a path on our journey. So here we go. Phase one of what I'd like to share with you is a learn and plan phase. The learning that I've been doing in the past 6 months or so has been me being a part of all these networks at the local level, at the regional level, at the state level, and national level. And I have to tell you, I'm super proud to sit at these meetings and introduce myself and say from District 25, because this is a role that is new right now in many districts, and I'll get into that a little bit more. So at the local level, I'll share with you in more detail about an Arlington Heights Community DEI Task Force, a regional through the North Cook Intermediate Service Center, a state level Illinois Coalition of Educational Equity Leaders, and at the national level, there are many, many organizations right now that are doing this work. These are just a few that we've been looking through. So at the local level, it is, I started in July, and I got an email in July 2022 that the Village of Arlington Heights was launching this DEI task force. I believe at our first meeting, it came to be that at the village level, they had a vision that we're gonna be doing some DEI work, but isn't the Park District also doing some DEI work? How about the library? How about the school districts around? So why can't we do the work together was the mission. So it all started with, an email. We're going to have this meeting, come and let's just talk. We went, we attended, I went and Adam Harris went, and we attended it in the hopes of we're going to share ideas. This is going to be a place where Arlington Heights constituents get to sit together, have conversations about what are you doing, what are you doing, what can we do together in collaboration. So doing this work has been great experience for us. We're meeting again in a couple weeks at the Senior Center. So we've changed our location for meetings as well, just to get to know the community better as a whole. And the school districts that are represented there, I would be someone who is first year in this role. Some of those districts don't have a necessary DEI person at the table, but it's someone who's doing the work at their district. And a district like 214 may be a little bit further along than us, so it's really been great to learn from each other in that way. And I also put parent DEI groups on this local page because I've had the opportunity to meet with parents in our school district in September and December. These parents are people who have been doing DEI work at their school, so perhaps through PTA committee work. And I wanted to get to know them. I wanted to know what is their why, what is their story, what's getting them to do this work. And through those conversations, we had some honest conversations about their experiences related to DEI. And at the end of the day, those conversations were really important to me because it brought me back to every child is someone's child. That concept that we are here to ensure that all of our schools have safe spaces for all of our kids. So it's been great. And at the regional level, this one launched in September 2022. So I think you'll notice a trend that a lot of these dates are within the past 6 months. So we are right along joining these meetings along with all of these surrounding districts. This one was launched September 2022 by the North Cook Intermediate Service Center, and those are the participants listed there. And we had, at our first meeting, we had a guest speaker. He was the 2021 ISB Teacher of the Year, and he said this phrase that I put up there, and it stayed with me, and I typed it out and put it in my office. It said, "You do not need a perfect plan, just get busy." And I think that was the perfect thing I needed to hear in that moment, because there is so much going on right now. Yes. And it was something that stuck with me because I knew that I was hearing all these things at all these networking groups I was going to, and I had so many ideas. I'm reading so much, but where do you start? So I keep that one by my side. And the group also created that purpose statement. So District 25 got to be a part of creating that statement, which I love. Also, did you notice there is an extra letter, DEIB? It stands for belonging, and I love that. And it's something that I find so important, that we include a sense of belonging for all of our students. At the statewide level, there is an Illinois Coalition of Education for Equity Leaders. This one meets less frequently. However, it is very valuable information, as it has information from what's going on around the state of Illinois. This is where they often bring some legislation, what's going on in that realm, as well as guest speakers that are coming from various districts, but also another valuable resource. ISB has created an equity journey continuum that launched October 2022. I don't know how much you have heard about this, but the equity journey is an informational tool. So they wanted to stress out, it's just giving you information at this point to help districts view their data through lens of equity. So they're not collecting any new data for the purpose of this equity journey continuum. They're using data that they are already collecting from us. So there are 3 areas in student learning. They are using assessments such as the kindergarten assessment, IAR, Illinois Assessment of Readiness, the Access for English Learners, as well as information on our advanced programs. The learning conditions includes climate surveys like 5 Essentials, student attendance and suspension rates, and elevating educators is data from our teacher experience information and their education and teacher evaluation. So again, these are all information they're already gathering from every district and turning it into something that looks like this. Now this, they told us, is data from the 2018-2019 school year. So although this has been a learning experience for me to see what it will look like, I'm really excited to see what it will look like with more current data, and also how, and more importantly, how they take that data, like what, I'd like to learn more about how they're turning that into steps, those steps that are indicated there. Step 1, 2, 3, and 4, as you see in those 3 areas. So more to come and the equity journey continuum. At the national level, these are the 3 I mentioned that we are, that I have been looking into. You know, Twitter is a place where people recommend books or people to follow, and I have found these 3 to be helpful. The Leading Equity Center, the Courageous Conversations, and Beyond Diversity are all organizations that provide professional development opportunities, whether you are an individual like myself or you are looking to bring some of this learning to an organization like a school district. So at this point, that is the learning and planning phase. Now, as we go to the phase 2, we're still learning. I'll still be on my learning journey, but we're getting ready to share with you some of the things that have been implemented and planning to implement this for the remainder of this school year. As I was thinking of where to start, I reminded myself of that quote by Justin: "You don't have to have a perfect plan, just get busy." So I knew I wanted to think about different ways that I can impact district, administration, school staff, community, students. And so one of the first things I did was to take what I know, and what I knew working in the multilingual world is that I often shared with the multilingual staff, hey, this holiday is coming up, this celebration is coming up. Here's a book you can read with your students who may celebrate. Here's how you can share it with your school. And so, although it may seem that it's just another calendar, it was so much more than that. This project was super special to me. We created it in July and shared it with all of our admin in August. It was a beautiful collaboration with the Department of Communication where I said, hey, I just kind of email my teachers, what's a better way to share this information with everyone? And so we decided to, first of all, do a lot of research in creating the actual dates. And it now sits with our regular calendar on our website. And we have encouraged our building administrators to start using this information. It's not just a calendar, it comes with a supplemental document that has information about each holiday. And we encourage them to use it during morning announcements, newsletters, because you never know when that one child hears the holiday that they celebrate on the announcements and what that meant to them. And it also keeps our staff and community informed. So here is an example of what those look like. You may have seen them. On the left is a sample of a school's newsletter that they send out to their community. And on the right is an example of what it may look like on social media. That's a sample from Twitter, but it may have been, someone may have seen it on Instagram or Facebook. And so we think these simple reminders really does impact just the knowledge of our teachers, families, communities. If you've never heard of Diwali, now someone has seen it. Now a student has heard of it and can go talk about it at home. And another way you may have seen the impact of that are through the stories we've been sharing. These are in video format, and they get in the classroom, they get the kids talking, and these two in particular are about a newcomer experience and a student with a learning disability, which we love sharing. Diverse perspectives. At the district level, I get the opportunity to meet with all of our admins, so all of our principal and assistant principal teams. And we thought, if I have that time with them anyway, how can I start having these conversations? And so one of the first things we did in August was an activity called My World, My Lens. So briefly, I would like to do it with the board one day, so I'm not going to give you all the details, but basically it's a series of 25 questions, and it's a silent activity that was hard for us to do, but the responses were in bead form, like an actual color bead. And so at the end of it, you get a bag with different color beads, or maybe the same color bead. And so the point of that is that's your perspective. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, that's what you're bringing to the table, and how vital it could be to gain the perspective of someone who has a different perspective than yourself. We also repeated that activity with everyone here at the Dunton Administration Office in November 2022. We paired it with an SEL. We did like a equity SEL day of training here at Dunton, and it was a great opportunity for our non-teaching staff to also participate in that type of activity. We plan to do the same activity with our teacher partnership with Bellwood District 88 that you will hear about more in the next couple of months. And here is what it looks like. And the quotes are some of the reflections from participants. Another group that we wanted to start doing some learning with is our staff, of course. And some of these were planned last year through my multilingual lens, and Ivy Hill happens to be our school with the most number of multilingual learners. And we partnered with the Illinois Resource Center to bring professional learning in the area of embracing our diversity, and this is our identity and how we can approach learning in an asset-based mindset. In October, I facilitated a new teacher session called Multilingual Learners in the General Education Classroom. It was a wonderful experience to have them all in person again. I have done this before, but in the last couple years it had been on Zoom, and it's just so great to see the energy of new staff and the questions they have, and how invested they are in all of these learners. This year, for the first time, I created a newcomer 3-part professional development series, and I've attended so many of our schools so far because we're getting an influx of newcomers, and how to work with them, how to work with their families, how to engage them in the regular gen ed classrooms. And we have the opportunity to host a Teach Plus Illinois Affinity group here in District 25. This is a partnership through ISB and Teach Plus, and we happen to have someone in our own district who was trained and is a facilitator of this group. So this is a group for BPOC educators, so Black, Indigenous people of color. This is a place where they can go and meet and have conversations about their experiences. And these are just some of the outcomes of the trainings we've done, shared by our own teachers. 13 languages in a classroom. Isn't that incredible? And 11 different languages. Can't wait to add more. Another opportunity that is just around the corner for our staff is leading Equity Learning Group. This was one of the first books I read coming into this role, and the author is a teacher turned principal, turned equity leader, turned author. So I think as I was reading this book, it turned out to be the one that I connected with the most, that shared real experiences, and it was so authentic that I felt like this is the book I would recommend to anyone. And you have a copy for yourselves to start reading. As we are about to launch, we have 30 participants. We opened it up to all staff, and this is a perfect size group that I wanted to engage in this conversation. All 9 schools are represented. We have all staff groups represented, and by that I mean it was important to me to have all voices. And so in this group of 30 participants, we also have food service in there. We also have facilities in there. So it is not just our school teachers that are there, it's principals as well. It's we have an admin assistant that's joining us, and I think people filled out this Google form to participate because they generally wanted to learn more. And here are some of their responses. I'll give you a moment to read. I really enjoyed reading all these responses, and I'm happy to share them with you today as we see that our staff is truly embracing the work we are embarking on as a district and helping our students and staff feel welcome. And all this work that we have done and about to do will eventually lead us to phase 3, which will happen sooner than we know. We're still learning, by the way, so that will remain as a part of this journey, and we're going to evaluate. This spring, I'm hoping to take a look back and what we have accomplished in the first year, having a director of equity role and partnering with all the networks I've mentioned today. And I'm hoping to explore some of these professional development opportunities. So perhaps exploring equity audit options. I know we've done curriculum equity, but this would be a district equity audit. Some of the networking groups I'm a part of, they're starting to talk about this, so I'm eager to learn more about what they look for, what it entails, and bring you more information about that as we move forward. I'm looking forward to onboard new staff training. So as I mentioned with the multilingual series I've been doing, I think we can do the same thing with equity. I think we can take time that we already have at every single building, so whether it's a staff meeting that we already have and trying to figure out how can we start incorporating ongoing trainings for staff. All staff training opportunities, what I mean by that is, you know, we have institute days, school improvement days. How can we get the whole school to experience the same type of training? Board of Education, PTA, council collaboration, of course, community engagement and student affinity groups with District 214 are on my radar because I know they have found some success with that, and I would love to see us collaborating with them in that way. Because equity is a part of everything we do, these are some collaborations I foresee with other district departments. With DSL, we would review curriculum, equity audit, as I just mentioned, and the results and the recommendations and how to move forward with some of them, participate in conversations about advanced placement process, DSL and DSS. We would want to review local and state assessment data of subgroups. And personnel, these 2 bullet points are something we've been having many conversations about. It's how do we implement updated protocol to diversify the screening and interview team? So meaning how do we, with the current staff we have, how do we diversify the team that looks at candidates? Or how do we promote our DEI initiatives to attract diverse staff and retain them? Thank you for taking the first step in the equity journey. I know that it is a journey, and so I would love to take any questions you have or clarifications at this time.
Thank you so much, your first presentation here, and I want to say, and I think my colleagues will agree, that you hit it out of the ballpark, so thank you so much for that really informative, detailed kind of look at the action phase of this work. We're so excited you're here. I have questions and lots of comments, actually, for you, but I'm going to open it up to my colleagues before I chime in. Any comments for Ms. Schaub?
No, I appreciate the calendarization of a lot of this, what you've done, and like I would just kind of ask you to continue to do that.
Okay.
You know, measurable stuff for us. When is what happening, and what should we have on our radar? And you know, I love that from all the different places. You know, hearing where ABC 25's next meeting is, but not just the events, but like your, you know, as your phase 3 comes to fruition, what are the milestones? When are they, and you know, what do they look like? I like that flavor in future presentations, but that was the only thing that I wanted to both acknowledge and then also ask for.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Madam President?
Yes, Gina.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Congratulations on your new role. I look forward to seeing really great things. I would support what Brian has offered up as advice in the go forward plan. I would also ask, you know, what are the challenges you're facing? And where is it that we can help?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Gina. You know, I really appreciate, and I'll ditto that, you know, as far as we cannot assess what we can't measure, right? So we're really looking forward to continue to hear kind of what's been happening and that learn and evaluate phase. So that's excellent. And for all of us, and I'm glad you brought this up, when it comes to this diversity, equity, inclusion, we're all on this learning continuum, and we always will be. So I'm really glad that that mindset and that culture of us as educators, as a school board, as a district community, that we're lifelong learners, right? So we are on this journey, and you're, you know, along with the educators in this building, you are kind of leading this charge. So thank you for that. And I really appreciate you starting this presentation with your story and the positionality of it, because for us, and you shared the numbers and the data of the students that are in our district, right? Because we, when that student is coming into our classroom, we can't kind of meet their needs unless we know their story, just like you shared your story with us. So it's so important to get to know that story, and that sense of belonging is truly, we know that without a sense of belonging, or that it's completely tied, a student's sense of belonging and their achievement is neck to neck. So if they do not have a sense of belonging, we see those scores will not match up. So that piece, right along with our strategic plan of academic achievement, right, comes right hand in hand with our work as a school board. And you mentioned the school board in these conversations, and it's very much the case that we all need that common understanding. So all of us in this ecosystem at District 25, this District 25 family, that we're all part of this journey with you. So we want you to know that. And on a on that piece that you're talking about, that community collaboration, right? This work is not done in silos. So the fact, I applaud Arlington Heights as a community and the village for kind of launching this work, because you talked about an equity audit, and you'll see in the research that not only is this the equity audit done at a district level, it's also done at a community level, just because there is no way little us, District 25, will succeed in this journey unless we really wrap arms and go hand in hand with the whole community. So the fact that you're doing these very strategic connections with Arlington Heights community groups, the chamber is added, our local businesses, our local governmental agencies, that is really key work and really important in what you're doing. Of course, I could talk a lot about this, but I wanted to point out that, you said that dates to no calendar. It's a genius idea what you've done, because it is something that when a family doesn't see themselves in books or on the calendar, it kind of hits home for them. So the fact that you've done this, and it's all about, never about exclusion, it's about including everybody, right? Maybe Christmas or Hanukkah, we're here as humanity to celebrate all these wonderful festivities that go on in different families. So I appreciate that, and I actually saw it by chance, and I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't even know we had this. So thanks for putting that out there. And lastly, I'll say, this asset-based mindset is critical to student achievement. That when we're looking at our students, no matter, and you use the term newcomer, and then we have terms like BIPOC, right? For our job as educators, as community members, as neighbors, as school board members, we're here to support every single student in this community. So your work is truly pivotal, and thank you for doing it. Thank you for that you'll be back, and we're really happy that you're going to be back, that you're going to be keeping us up to date with the data of what's been happening. So, Shad, thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we will now move on to the superintendent report. And I have some notes from Dr. Bine for this section. First of all, for the Freedom of Information Act, the FOIA requests are listed on the agenda for you to see. And then as far as the second reading of policies, we'll move on to that section. As you know, our list of policies for second reading have already been reviewed by the Policy Committee and the full Board of Education. And the policies listed for the second reading are the ones that had changes suggested by the Illinois Association of School Board and the district administrators and or the attorney or the board during our discussion. So at this point, can I get a motion and a second, please?
Madam President.
Yes, Greg.
I move that the Board of Education approve the policies as presented.
Thank you. And a second.
You should do it as a part of the policy committee, but I will second.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Siniglia. Are there any additional questions or comments on these policies?
Madam President, I have one question.
Yes, Gina.
In the overview, it says that there are answers still required on policy 5:250 in red. Can I get clarification on before we approve?
Can I answer that, if you don't mind?
Yes, please. Thank you, Lena.
That just, when I put that document together, if IASB requires answers, I always put that. It was decided by the policy committee and then discussed at the last meeting that the answer, I think, was no. I can't remember what it was. But if you look at the policy, the answer is the question is answered.
Yes.
I just keep that on the overview so you know that there is a question.
Okay, because all the other ones, all the other red from all the rest of the overview is cleared. So that's why I wasn't sure. I just
Because there
wanted-
aren't questions on all the policies, it was
Got it.
just that one from Press 110. It only happens once in a while that they have questions on there that we ask to customize the policy for our district.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Lana.
Thank you, Lana. I'm really proud as board president for the amount of work that our board has been putting into the processes of policy and policy adoption processes, working with our attorney, and the amount of work that is done as for our whole team that Lana prepares, that comes from press, from the Illinois Association of School Boards, and all that information kind of filters through to us. Lana looks at it, and the attorney looks at it, the whole board looks at it, the committee looks at it. So the amount of work that each of us are doing for as policy kind of making group is phenomenal. So I'd like to applaud the board on the amount of work and Ms. Lana as well. So Lana, if you could please call a vote, unless seeing no other questions.
Member Faso?
Yes.
Member Cerniglia?
Yes.
Member Jogi?
Yes.
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Thank you. The next item will be tabled for a future board meeting, which is teacher partnership with Bellwood School District 88. That's going to be a real phenomenal report from Dr. Bine and a fellow superintendent from Bellwood, and we'll look forward to hearing about that at a future board meeting. At this point, we have second community input. Lana, do we have any? Okay. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to future agenda items. I will, as we continue our work for the district, board member input is truly welcome at this, in this forum. And as we move into the future agenda item section of our meeting, I would like to encourage us as a board to meet with Dr. Bine if we have an individual topic we would like to consider for a future meeting, right? And in order to be efficient with our time, I suggest that after an individual meeting with Dr. Bine to seek clarification on the topic, really get all the information, and then to suggest it as a future board meeting if the individual board member still feels that it warrants a full board discussion. Because I was looking at our future agenda items list, and it's getting longer and longer, and we may not get through it even in the school year. So definitely I know there's items that I want to discuss as well, and it always helps to talk to Dr. Bine first, kind of flesh it out, see if the whole board needs to have this discussion before we kind of bring it forward at a future agenda item. So definitely keep that thought, discuss it with Dr. Bine, and then see if we need to bring it on. So at this point, there's topics with dates to be determined, and the topics, so even with this topic, that you brought up, the cybersecurity one, feel free, please do talk to Dr. Bine, see if we need to continue to have that on there. We could change it if not. But so I'd encourage you to do that. And then we have student achievement assessment, and then the RULA update is going to be happening as well. Are there any new topics that you've already discussed with Dr. Bine that you want to bring up at this point, or any comments for this new topic section? Okay. So that's it for the agenda. And what we'll do now, we are going to need a motion to adjourn to go back into closed session, please. And I'll need a second as well.
Madam President.
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Gina. Lana, can you please call the roll?
Member Faso?
Yes.
Member Cerniglia?
Yes.
Member Jogi?
Yes.
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Thank you so much for everybody who came today.